Hello friends, welcome to How to VLN channel. This is DB VLN stream. Today in this video we are going to see what would happen if you run a CTAS on a table which is having an identity column in Oracle. It's a continuation to the last video. We discovered a puzzle in the last video. Now we'll see how to resolve it. Okay, as usual, as we normally do. Let's go through the steps we are going to follow today. So it's a continuation to last video. We left with a puzzle where we try to perform a CTAS on a table with the identity column and find the new table definition resulting in a table with no identity column. We expect CTAS will create the table definition as is, but this is the first time I saw it's not the case. I mean, I know it loses partition if you do a CTAS as it is, and this another thing that I learned that it loses the identity column also. So we will also see how to work around this, and then we'll also load the data. The purpose of CTAS is that you duplicate the table such that the table definition and the data, right? So here also we are going to do the same, but with a little bit of trick. Let's see how we do it. Okay, the first step is we'll reproduce the issue. We'll create performance. We'll try to perform a CTAS and we'll see what do we get. All right, and then after we do that, you notice here it is generated always as, so which means that you should not be able to insert any any values for this particular column. If you try inserting, then you will face an error. So that's what we are going to show here. And then the first issue that we are going to see is the impact of generated always as column, generated always as identity. And the second one is we are going to see how the CTAS is going to lose the identity definition itself. And then we will drop this table that we created, and then we'll create it manually. The same table, I mean the same table we dropped with the definition as it is coming from the source table. And then we'll see how we load the data. You understood now. By now you would have understood that we cannot use generated always as we are going to see, right? So what is the alternate we can use? It's generated by default. Okay, and then we load the data using insert into, and then we can try loading some additional data into the table and see if it works fine or not. All right, let's get started. As usual, this is our screen. We are already connected to the database session on which we perform this operation. Let's start here. So let's try to create our test table, and let's check the user sequence. Right, so which one of this is our sequence? Let's find it out. I'm using a shortcut, but there is another way. You can really use, I think, user tab calls, user tab call, or some other videos there. I'll show you what it is. I already showed it in the last video. I forgot it now, but I'll show you again. So T tab, but this is 73754. This is the one. You can see here it's the same definition. From this also you can see the last number is 1. It's never populated. Alright, let's get the DDL out. Okay, so you can see here it is generated always as identity. So it is reflecting properly fine. Now let's load some data. You see, I have not introduced any value for the column 1, which is the identity column, which is app user ID. Alright, so let's do the second one now. Second row. Cannot insert into a generated always as identity column. Okay, let's see what is the resolution for this. An attempt was made to insert a value into an identity column created with generated always keyword. A generated always identity column cannot be directly inserted. Instead, the associated sequence generated must provide the value. So generated always is a challenge. You cannot insert a value into it. Alright. Which means that we have to find a workaround. That's what we are going to see, right? We saw already in the preview. Now we are going to really execute it. Now let's create, this is the first issue. We created the first issue. Anyway, we'll commit it until whatever we have done now. We have one record. Now let's create another table, a copy of this one, and let's check the DDL of this table. And we'll see if we have the identity column. See, there is no identity definition. Generated always is lost, is no more there. Right. So now let's do the workaround. Let's drop this table, which just we created now, and we'll create a new table. Table is created. So we didn't use generated always as right. Alright, so I need to change this. So if you use this, what would happen? We will still get this insert error. If you try loading some data, right, you'll see now. I'll try loading it, and you will see the same error. Cannot insert into a generated always identity column. It's the same error. You cannot insert now, even now, because you're trying to fix the DDL issue where you lost the generated always as identity. But when you try loading the data from this table, identity tab onto the CTAS table, you still have this error. So how do we work around this? We have to change the table definition from generated always as to generated by default. Alright, let's see what does that mean. Right, so if you go here, you will see this definition: generated always as identity, generated by default as identity. Generated always as identity means that the generator only will supply the identity column value. Generated by default as identity, either you can supply or the generator will supply. If you miss to supply, the generator will supply. If you supply, it will not supply. So very simple, and it is very good to manage with it. But there is a concern with that as well, which we will see now. Okay, first let's drop this table. Right, table is dropped. So let's create this table with the generated by default as identity. Yeah, I need this sequence number. This is very important. This question mark, what it means is, so I already have some data loaded into my main table, and the sequence number is already increased. Now, it's a concern for me because I need this column very unique, this app user ID. Maybe it's not the case in yours, but in my case, I need this sequence number not reused. So what should I do is I need to find out the max value of this app user ID. Max of app user ID from identity tab on the way from where we are going to copy the data. You ensure that there are no new inserts happening on this table, the source, and find out the maximum value. It is 1. So what should I do? I have to put value number 2 here. So it will always generate the sequence number now from number 2 after I load the data. Alright. So let's create the table now. So table is created. Now if I try, and I'll show you the table DDL. I want to see whether it is showing the identity column now. Yeah, generated by default as identity against generated always as identity. Now let's load the data. This time you shouldn't face any issues. One row created. Though I didn't call that particular column as a primary key, we still take care of it. Alright. So now even if you run this select max of app user ID from CTAS, it will still show 1. And you can notice here it is going to start with the number 2, and that you can verify from here. So you see here, then the last number is 2 for 73757, and so that's CTAS identity 73759. This is the sequence number. You can see the last number is already updated to 2. 73574 was the original table sequence number. It's already at 11, but it doesn't mean it's at 11. It's having a cache of 10, so it shows 11. But actually it's at number 2 currently. Okay. So now let's select the values from CTAS identity. Yes. Does it match with what we have in the identity tab? Yes, it is. Now let's try loading some data into the CTAS identity, and let's see if the value goes properly getting incremented. Alright, yes, I need to put the app username. Right. We are supplying only app username. One row inserted. Let's see if it has received the new record. See, it is at number 2 now. I commit and I insert one more record. This is where you need to pay attention. Cannot insert into a, oh, I'm inserting into identity tab. I'm sorry guys. I should be inserting into CTAS identity. Right. So this should allow me. It's a good case study, right? Identity tab one does not allow you, but CTAS is allowing you. It is allowing me to create a record. This is the difference between these two. So, and at the same time, you need to pay attention now, Roy, because you have already used number 4. In case you have a duplicate constraint or you have a primary key defined on that identity column, then you cannot use number 4 next. So what do you need to do? You need to adjust the sequence number such that the next value automatically goes above number 4. Alright. So I hope you enjoyed this video. So in summary, what we try to say is generated by default versus generated always. Generated always doesn't allow you to insert a value for the column which is identified as identity column, versus generated by default allows you. And when you do a CTAS, the identity column information is lost. So you have to manually create the table using the same table definition as a source using dbms metadata, and then you have to use insert or select to load the data, and you need to take care of the identity column definition. Change it from generated always as identity to generated by default. When you do that, you need to ensure the start with value for the sequence is adjusted to the max value of the column from the original source table. And then when you load the data, next time when you load by mistake with some value for the identity column, you need to ensure that that particular column value is not reused. If you thought you have a primary key or unique constraint defined on it. Thank you. So this is what I wanted to convey, and this is what I wanted to share. I hope you really like this video. If you really like it, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to How to Learn channel. Thank you everyone. We'll meet in the next video. Bye.